Welcome to your favorite horror storyteller. This video contains several scary stories. Please watch it to the end. There are time codes at the bottom if you want to switch the story. Also, I'm grateful for your support and advice. Thank you. Let's get started. This story happened to me in 2006. Our town is separated from the world by a barbed wire perimeter due to the presence of two factories. This is about the unfinished building of one of these plants. Our town is very small. Almost everyone knows each other. There is no place to walk, so the part that leads an informal way of life gathers either in the woods around the campfire with songs and guitars or goes to this building. The core began to build in the 80s-90s, and then it was abandoned unfinished. This huge building stands on the bypass road outside the city in the swamp. It is almost impossible to meet people there, just passing by. Rains and winds for so many years have soaked and collapsed the concrete. Some of the slabs were simply stolen. The construction site is very big, huge. A huge hall 3 stories high, 100 meters around the perimeter. Under it a basement, where rarely anyone went down, because it was very damp, cold, and dark. There were 3 staircases leading up from the hall. 2 of them connected on the roof. On the way to the roof, each floor consisted of an intersection of rooms separated by concrete slabs. The 3rd staircase led to the only 2nd floor on this side and to the basement, where there was a passage to the tunnel to the next construction site. According to the architect's plan, several workshops were to be connected by such underground passages. This passage was 250, 300 meters long. There were no windows or other lighting in it. You could only see the light at the end of this tunnel from the neighboring construction site, hence it earned the name Tunnel of Death. This tunnel ended with an exit to a swamp because the last workshop was never completed. A swamp was formed there. The roof was amazing. Basically, everyone always gathered on the roof. It offered a view of the mountains, of the factories, of the city itself. However, the roof was very fragile. There were a lot of holes in it, and the concrete on it was thin. They walked on the roof, not on the slabs themselves, but on the places where they joined together. They thought it was safer that way. There were also windows on the roof overlooking the hall. From them, you could see everything that was going on at the construction site. There were very few particularly scary incidents. Maybe someone would fall and break a leg or an arm or bump into a rebar. There was plenty of that. But there were 3 special stories. The first story. My acquaintances, I was not with them at the time, had a drunken sleepover at this construction site. Some very cool guy from another city came to visit them, so at night this guy had a craving. He went away from them literally around the corner, maybe went down to the floor below, and disappeared. They searched all night, couldn't find him. In the morning they found his corpse in the basement. He had fallen between the slabs. Since then, in one of the rooms of the construction site in the darkness painted on the wall eye with the inscription, "He is watching you." 2nd story. Behind this construction site on the bypass road, they organized car races, as it was very rare to meet a passing car on this road. This place was perfect for races. Some people would sit on the side of the road to watch the races, but the best view, of course, was from the construction site. And on such days you could meet a lot of people there. When everyone was already going home, it was 10 o'clock in the evening, it was still quite light. 2 boys aged 12, 14 years old ran up to one of the participants of the race. They said that they had found a dead body in the basement at the construction site. He thought that maybe someone drunk fell asleep there, and the boys in the dark mistook it for a corpse. They insisted on showing. As a result, when he went with them, he came across the swollen, mutilated corpse of a man who had been lying there for probably a week, maybe more. Of course, they made a fuss. A lot of people gathered, those who had not yet gone home. How he ended up there, who brought him there, who killed him, they never found out in the end. The case was frozen. But the 3rd story happened to me personally, after which neither I nor those who were with me that night at the construction site never went there again. We were walking around the city in the evening. Boring. We started talking about this construction site. Michael started talking about how he had to spend the night there once. He said that it was not scary, even funny and very bright. The construction site is behind the factory, the lighting from which illuminates this construction site. It was already getting dark outside, and we were all curious. Really, how does the construction site look at night? There were 4 of us, me, Michael, John, and Kate. We decided to go there after all, to lie on the roof, to look at the city in the distance, at the starry sky, to drink a beer there. It was a long walk, so by the time we got there, it was already dark. Only the outside of the construction site, the concrete building and the columns supporting the roof was lit, but it was very dark on the floors. We lit the way with lighters, although there was not much light from them. We didn't have cell phones to shine the screen back then. We went up to the roof. The night is quiet. The sky is clear. We were sitting, laughing, looking at the sky and drinking beer. Suddenly we heard something falling with a rumble somewhere downstairs, as if a rebar was thrown down from the 3rd floor to the 1st. We all at once pulled up to the window from the roof to the hall. We were frightened. No, rather, we were wary. The construction site was quite old. Something was collapsing and falling there all the time. But still we were interested in this sound, and we began to look for what could have fallen and from where. We sat and looked for a minute or two, and suddenly Kate said, "Oh my God, who's there?" and pointed to the 2nd floor. There, behind the stove, stood a man. He was hiding behind the stove, looking in our direction and then hiding behind it again. We were shocked. What would a man be doing here at night? We were very scared. Suddenly he threw something from behind the stove. Again there was a rumble. He looked out again, looked at us and hid again, as if he was attracting our attention, and suddenly we heard a scream. No, not a scream, but rather even a roar, as if a man of age was shouting in a low voice. We started running our eyes around the construction site looking for the source of the sound. While we were distracted, the man from the 2nd floor disappeared, and we noticed him already on the 3rd floor. It couldn't have happened. He couldn't have swung from floor to floor in a few seconds. It was about 50 meters to the stairs. And he stood and looked at us from the 3rd floor, already close to the roof, and suddenly swung his hand sharply, again from behind the slab, and some stone or a fragment of concrete flew in our direction, hit the window and flew down. Then the man started laughing wildly. We were frightened. We thought it was either a lone psycho or there were several of them, and they decided to scare us that way. Either way, we had to get out of there. We rushed up the 2nd staircase. Kate and I were in a panic. The guys were still holding on more or less steadily. As we ran down the darkness, Kate tripped on something and tumbled down the stairs, nearly killing herself. I was hysterical, crying. We had already reached the 1st floor. The exit was very close. Suddenly we heard some distinct rustling on the way. We stood like stumbling blocks, so frightened that we couldn't even breathe. We just stood and looked where the sound was coming from, and suddenly, very close to us, about 5 or 6 meters away from us, he looked out from behind the corner. He stuck his head out and looked at us with his eyes. Huge eyes. His eyes were quite human, but they were too big. His hair was all messed up, and he was looking at us and smiling. Then Michael and John got up the courage to shout, "Who are you? What do you want? How long since you've been punched in the face?" And he just smiles. And then his smile starts to stretch from ear to ear. Literally, this is when our nerves gave out, and we ran back up to the roof to get to another ladder. He started laughing loudly and throwing rocks at us. Michael got hit in the head with a rock. It was awful, wild laughter and stones thrown after us. It felt like they were thrown from different directions. I don't know about the others at that moment, but I prayed that we wouldn't run into him again on our way out through another staircase. When we ran out into the bright hallway, it was a little easier. We ran from that construction site without looking back until we were outside the factory in a lighted area. Kate was bruised. Michael's head was bleeding from a rock. I was teary-eyed, and John was tattered and dirty too. We smoked, calmed down, came to our senses. We started to listen. From the side of the construction site came rumbling and hysterical laughter, barely audible from such a distance. We ran further away, and after that did not appear there even in the daytime. At that time, I had just got my license, and I was full of joy, so I decided to take my 12-year-old sister to the countryside. In our family, it turned out that we mostly went to water bodies far from civilization, where we fished and had picnics. That time, I bought food, packed everything I needed, and taking my sister Mary, went to a half-abandoned pond, which was 100 kilometers from the city. We arrived well, had a snack, and sat fishing as we had planned. Sometime later, Mary wanted to go to the toilet and ran into the bushes. She came back pale and said she didn't feel well. My sister rarely complained about her health, so I decided not to risk it and drove back. I thought Mary would protest, but she didn't say a word. That only made me more anxious, so I put my things in the car. Luckily, I'd managed to park it not far away, put my sister in the back seat and drove home. I'm driving, and then someone calls me, and the ringtone is playing the one I set for my family's numbers. I had my cell phone in my bag, so I stopped the car. There was no traffic on the road, so it was no problem, and started looking for it. When I found the phone a minute later, it was still ringing, and Mary's number was on the screen. Naturally, I was about to scold my sister for distracting me from driving. I turned around, and there was a dog in the back seat. An ordinary dog, a retriever of some kind, only very dirty. But the strangeness of the situation scared me more than any horror stories. I seemed to want to run, but I'm sitting like a stumbling block, staring at the animal. And the dog also does not show any activity, just looks into my eyes, and looks. And at some point he just began to dissolve, as if the transparency of the image in the photo editor increased. That's how the animal disappeared. Only dirty traces on the seat remained. And only at that moment, I finally realized that I had lost my sister. My heart pounded wildly, my head was full of horrible thoughts, and the only hope was that my sister was still near the pond. And then the phone rang again. I answered it, and Mary started yelling at me, saying, "How could I leave her alone?" I immediately turned around and drove to the pond at a speed I couldn't believe. My sister was there, in tears. I was heartbroken. I didn't tell Asya the whole truth then. I told her that I had gone to a stall with cold drinks, but it was closed. She told me that she had noticed a dog in the bushes and had been playing with it for a couple of minutes until she heard the noise of our car. At the mention of the dog, goosebumps ran down my back. But for me at that point, I didn't care what exactly we were up against. I just packed my things and, putting my sister in the front seat next to me, drove home at the maximum speed allowed. We made it home this time, thankfully without adventure. My parents were at the cottage that week, so the apartment was empty. I put the leftovers on the table and was about to go take a shower when I heard Mary calling me. As I entered the living room, I noticed something that reminded me once again of what had happened, dashing my last hope that it was just an obsession. There were clear dog paw prints on the carpet. They disappeared before our eyes, just as the strange dog had disappeared. That's when I told my sister. I thought Mary would laugh, thinking I was joking, but she believed me at once. It's been our secret ever since, as well as the origin of the sounds we hear in our apartment now. Sometimes they sound like barking, sometimes something more sinister. But we keep quiet, especially since I'm moving soon. I hope this something doesn't follow me. I'm at a friend's house right now and I don't want to go home. 3 days ago, my parents went away for a week. May was hot, and the first night I had the idea to sleep not in my bed but on my loggia. But my loggia has neither a sofa nor a cot, only an armchair. The loggia is piled with all kinds of junk in the form of old boxes, tools, all sorts of rags, because of which to stretch out on the mattress on the floor was also impossible. It didn't stop me. I decided that I had enough of the chair and that I would sleep in it. I pulled out a bag chair on the loggia to put my feet on it, a terry sheet and a small pillow, made myself a nest in the chair, took a flashlight, water, cell phone to see the time, just in case I made a bed in the room, in case I couldn't sleep on the loggia, turned off everything in the room and closed myself on the loggia. I sat in a chair, curled up in this nest and fell asleep. I slept just fine. I didn't think that I would sleep so well, sitting in one position all night, not in my bed, but in another place. I didn't wake up at all during the night. I woke up and I didn't want to get up. I felt so good. I liked it so much that the next night I decided to sleep on the loggia again. I did everything like the first time, sat down, wrapped myself up. But for some reason I couldn't fall asleep right away. Something seemed to be in the way. I started to toss and turn, to look around. Everything was the same as always. There was a pile of junk on the loggia. The window was open. Everything was normal. I fell asleep somehow. I don't know how long it took, but I woke up. I just woke up, as I often do in the middle of the night. I opened my eyes. It was dark. I could hardly see the open window of the loggia. Sleepy. I twisted around, made myself comfortable, and while I was laying down, I glanced at the room window with sleepy eyes. In the evening, I hadn't curtained the window in my room with tulle, and above me there was a big dark square of the window, showing the darkness in my bedroom. I lay down comfortably and leaned my head back against the pillow, but at the last second, as I was taking my gaze away from the window into the room, I thought I saw something there in the window, something white. But my brain at that moment wanted to sleep so badly that I just didn't raise my head again to check it. I ducked into my pillow and instantly fell asleep. In the morning, I woke up. Everything is normal. I remembered that I had seen something in the window during the night only in the afternoon and decided that I had just woken up. I forgot about it. In the evening, I decided to lie down on the loggia again. I went out the same way, closed myself. I am sitting there, but I can't fall asleep again. I couldn't sleep. I felt uneasy. Like last night, I nodded off, decided to sit up, and while I was sitting up, I looked at the window in the room. And I saw that 2 white palms were pressed against the glass of my bedroom window on the other side, from the bedroom. I jerked in surprise, and everything went cold inside. I was staring at these palms, and then I saw that someone appeared behind the glass, and as if approaching the glass. It stood close to the glass, and I could see it relatively well. It was all white, dressed in something white and long, no face visible. It was standing in my bedroom near the window and resting its hands on the glass. I squirmed in my chair and screamed. There was nowhere to run. Not through the window because I live on the 4th floor. Not into the bedroom because it was there. I don't know how long I screamed like that. At some point, this someone took his palms off the glass and started to put them on the glass, then take them off again. He would put his right palm on the glass and take it away, his left palm on the glass and take it away, then his right palm on the glass again. It was slowly palming the window. I shrieked something unintelligible, jumped out from under the terry cloth, and cowered in the corner behind the chair. I covered my mouth with my hands and squeezed my eyes shut. It seemed that if I opened my eyes now, it would be standing right next to me. I sat like that until morning. When I heard the voices of people outside and saw the light through my eyelids, I opened my eyes. I don't know how I forced myself to open the loggia door and run into the bedroom. Running in and running through the room, I had time, of course, to glimpse the bedroom. There was nothing and no one there. From the bedroom, I ran out of the apartment into the yard as I was in my pajamas. My parents were coming. I would have to go home anyway.
I've been distrusting people for a while now. Keep in mind, those you care about may not be who you think they are at all. This story started over 3 weeks ago and still hasn't ended. I don't know many people, and I don't have any friends at all, except for one. We've been friends since high school. After graduation, our paths diverged, but we still meet once a month to have a beer and chat, discuss the latest news. And so, about a month ago, we met once again in a bar. Over a mug of beer, my friend told me that he had met an amazing girl. My friend had never had a problem with the opposite sex before, unlike me, but I had never seen him so delighted before. "You see, I've never had this before," he told me. "It's fate." I reassured him with a share of skepticism. "Say, wait. Falling in love will pass, and you will look at it with different eyes." Some time passed, and 4 days ago in the evening, my friend dropped by my house asking me to print him a couple of photos. They showed him and the same girl, blonde and really beautiful, in an embrace somewhere in the park. He copied the images to my computer, I printed them out, and the friend ran off to his place. I am a programmer, and I am currently working on a new image recognition system. Already now, the program I have written is able to distinguish people's faces and characteristic features of these faces, shape of nose, ears, moles, etc., in images, then compare them with others stored in the image database and find similarities and differences. With nothing to do that night, I stuck their pictures into my program. 30 seconds later, I was surprised to see the result. The program had successfully identified only one face in all the photos. My friend's face. The face of his girlfriend could not be identified. I didn't pay much attention to it. Such algorithms never guarantee 100% certainty. Instead of getting concerned, I went deeper into searching and fixing bugs in my program. But 3 days later, the situation was exactly the same. In all the other photos, the program had successfully highlighted people's faces, but in these photos, only my friends. In desperation, I started to run it through the steps. I'd been working on one of the photos for hours, pixel by pixel, when I noticed that the colors of the pixels in the photo didn't match what I was seeing. The colors that the program was taking from the image, 80% of them were red and black, didn't look like the colors that were there. There was this girl's face. She was blonde with green eyes. There was just nowhere to put that many black and red pixels. I copied the part of the image corresponding to her face into another file. When I opened it, I saw what I should have expected, the girl's smiling face. But I already knew something was wrong. The hairs on the back of my neck had been moving for the second hour when I decided to select only part of her face and transfer it to a separate file, inverting the colors. I selected her eye, copied the coordinates into the program, and started it up. When I opened the file and enlarged the image, I almost fell off my chair. A completely black eye, with a vertical, bright red pupil surrounded by pale red skin, was what I saw on the screen. Gathering all my willpower into a fist, I proceeded to reconstruct the original image piece by piece. When I attached the second part, with a flattened non-human nose, to the existing part and looked at the result, I saw a normal human eye and nose. Experimentally, I found out that only a very small part of the image shows me what it really is when the critical mass of its true appearance accumulates. This creature mimicry as a human. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning, but I nevertheless rushed to the phone. A friend answered after a dozen or so rings. "Hello?" His voice was sleepy. "Is she with you?" I asked him. "Who? Are you drunk?" "Yours, the girl, with you." I tried not to let my excitement show in my voice. "Yeah, she's there and you woke her up. What did you want?" "She's not what she seems. Get out of there." "Are you crazy? Go sleep it off," he replied and hung up. I tried to call him back, but the phone was out of range. Switched off, apparently. The next day, I learned the bad news. My friend was found in the morning with his throat torn open on his own bed. The people who surround you and me may not be human at all. Be careful. You may be interacting with one of them every day.